Hello and welcome to A Different Life, your window into the world of persons with disabilities. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Hendricks. This week, we will focus on issues regarding access. Access to the built environment, access to education, employment, and health. Stay with us. With us this afternoon, we have the CEO of Digicel Foundation, Mrs. Charmaine Daniels. Welcome, Mrs. Daniels.
Thank you very much. An honor to be here with you.
So we have been looking at accessibility for persons with disabilities, and we are aware that Digicel Foundation and Digicel on a whole has been doing quite a bit in terms of ensuring that it is accessible to persons with disabilities in employment, in your environment. Tell us about that. What's the origin? What's the thinking?
Okay, so our patron, Dennis O'Brien, um, back when we launched Digital in 2000, he was very big on us including persons with disabilities because he had worked with Special Olympics. And so he had this vision of an inclusive company. And out of that came many initiatives that we had to do. The foundation would have been very focused on the special needs community arising out of that mandate. But for employment in Digicel, we were very deliberate in putting programs in place. So in 2015, for example, we had the Power Internship. And the Power Internship was really based on us wanting to be very inclusive and like and to make sure that we were not discriminating against persons with disabilities while we were employing persons to Digicel. And we have a very young um, cohort of employees, like they're very out of college or still in college. So we were very mindful of that. We had the Power Internship, which happened in 2015, where 10 persons with disabilities were brought into the business. They were assigned to departments. They were taught some basic things that they would need to know. They were assigned to departments. And then there was a period of a DPR, which is our performance review. And if they performed well, they were offered a permanent role in that department. And we have retained 7. So today we still have those original 7. Jenard works in the foundation. You're very familiar with Jenard. And we are actually going to have another Power Internship in June of this year, where we'll be looking to bring in some more persons with disabilities just to see where in the business they are comfortable, where they would like to fit in and be a part. We're very big on it. There are no allowances really made, but in terms of accessibility for them, this office down here has ramps. We have doors that once they swipe their ID, the doors will open for them.
And that's for everybody.
And that's it will open for everybody, but there's special doors for them that they can swipe and through. But they would be able to push our regular doors. I think the thing about employing persons with disabilities, a lot of times we get hung up on, do I have everything in place for them to be comfortable? And the truth is, they're not looking for you to make special exceptions for them. They just want the opportunity to come in and to use their mind and just to be treated like everybody else.
For persons who are seeking or wanting or desirous of employing persons with disabilities, or on the other hand, there may be employers that are timid and uncertain as whether or not they could accommodate them, what would you say?
I'd say go for it. Go for it. As you have persons with disabilities within your facilities, there are things that you may change. There are things that you may add. A rail in the bathroom because it would make it easier for the person to use the bathroom. But those things can be added over time. You don't need to have everything that you would need. And I think of it as an infant, right? When you go to have a baby, as mothers, we like to prepare and we like to think that we need to have the world, right?
Everything, yes.
You will never have the world because there's going to be something that comes up that you never thought the child would need, some teething gel, or there's,
Right.
whatever it is. And you're able to go and the child grows and the child learns, even if they had to do without something that would have made life easier for them in the
Right,
beginning. They
right.
still grow and they still thrive. And at a point where you're able to do it, you do it, and it still works. So I think I'd say to all employers out there, if you're thinking of hiring someone with a disability, I think that the most important thing to do is make sure that they can do what it is you want them to do.
Indeed.
There will be some teaching of that you would need to do, or your environment, to make them familiar with it. But outside of that, once they are competent to do what it is you want them to do, then I would say to you, and listen, you will not find people that are more loyal or work as hard, because there have been so many obstacles for them through life,
Indeed.
that they have a fighting spirit, and they have such a joy and such a positivity about them that they're a pleasure to be around, and
Indeed.
they challenge the rest of your staff. And that's another thing that a lot of companies are
Don't
concerned
know.
about. How will the rest of employees relate to them? And the truth is, once you have a zero tolerance
For
policy for
discrimination,
discrimination, regardless, you're black, you're white, you're whatever you are, you have a disability, you're of another sexual orientation, whatever it is. Once you have a zero tolerance policy, you don't have to worry about anything else, because once you bring them into that environment, everybody around them adjusts and they become more aware of their needs, and they become, just better human beings.
Indeed. And if persons are hesitant still, the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities is there to
Absolutely.
provide support and guidance. And of course, there will be codes of practice to help, in the
Correct.
different processes. But it is, we have learned from research and, in the practical sense, that persons with disabilities add value.
Absolutely.
They add value. They do not
Absolutely.
take away from the organization in any way, shape, or form.
No. And it's I think the most value that they add is actually making everyone around them a little better person. Because you're now more mindful, and you are more thankful of who you are and what you have, and you see the struggles, and it makes you want to be better and to help, and there's nothing, to me, there's nothing greater you could do. And also, the best gift you can give someone is your time, right? So just taking the time to know and learn about them and learn about the community at large. I think one thing, companies, if you are thinking of going this route, and to be fair, I think the law will push all of us to go this route at some point, do a volunteer day, Labor Day, do a Labor Day project with your staff at an institution where there are persons with special needs. And you will see the natural reaction of your staff compliment, and you will see how these persons also react. So I think, and a good place to go is a Paralympic, and play some basketball with the guys up there.
Indeed,
It doesn't
yes.
have to be work all the time, but when you see the drive of those guys, in
They
just
play
playing
just as
basketball,
hard.
they play harder. You're afraid to play with them. I'm afraid to play with them. But there's nothing they can't do. And I think that's the lesson that we need to take from this. And they'll be a great asset to your company if you do employ somebody with disabilities. And again, you can always contact the foundation,
Right.
just like you can. Dr.
Definitely.
Hendricks here, and you can walk through our building and just see we don't have a problem accommodating you. To just see and come and talk to us, or talk to HR about what are some of the things we do. Most important, though, is to make sure, and I took this from one of your conferences,
Right.
Make sure on the application form you indicate that you are willing to hire persons with this, and that they're welcome to apply.
Indeed.
And that's the first step.
Getting around the physical environment is something many of us take for granted. Curbs, thresholds, stairs, sidewalks, obstructions, narrow passageways are just few of the barriers we walk over, around, or through many times during the day. For those of us who have physical disabilities, however, a curb or a few stairs can be huge barriers. With us to discuss the issues of access are Executive Director of the Jamaica Society for the Blind, Conrad Harris, 24-year-old fourth-year student at the University of Technology, Sasha Gay Thompson, and 24-year-old fourth-year student at the University of Technology, Laron Williamson. Welcome to the program, everyone.
A pleasure.
Pleasure being here.
Yes, Mr. Harris, let me start with you. What are some of the major challenges in terms of access that persons with disabilities face on a daily basis?
There are numerous. I mean, the persons who have disabilities have a challenge quite often just accessing the public transportation system. We have a challenge sometimes using the sidewalks, the roads. In fact, I mean, I often tell people that there are some spaces where the road is actually easier to use than the sidewalks because of the numerous obstructions that are there. I know there are places that I have gone where you have many open manholes. You have situations where you have drop-offs. There are no rails. I mean, if you miss, you slide, and that is the end of it.
Right.
There are so many, and a lot of it. We focus on persons with disabilities, but this is not something that only assists persons with disabilities. If you have sidewalks and so that have proper rails, it helps children, it helps the elderly, and it is just good for everybody in a whole.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So the physical environment is a obstacle course for some persons and for many persons, whether or not persons have disabilities,
Right.
you'd say.
For us, one of the challenges that we have is that many persons tend to use the sidewalks as shops, right? And if you have those shops that have music included, so you're hearing loud music playing, and if it's at the intersection, at a light, a stoplight or at an intersection, it means that when we have to cross, we have to take our life in our hands, because if you have that kind of noise at the intersection, we're not able to hear when the traffic is coming or going.
Okay.
And we have to go about our business.
Right. So it is not only the physical, structural barriers, but music sometimes, or the noise around is also an obstruction in terms of crossing roads safely and utilizing pedestrian walkways. Thank you so much, Conrad. Laron, what have been the challenges that you have faced in the environment from day to day?
Well, I want to first say thank you again for having me. Well, for me, access to the different environments, the meaning can sometimes be tricky, because sometimes the access is there, but the way the structure is designed makes it inaccessible. For example, if the sidewalk is tiled, I understand that it's easier to clean for most businesses, but whenever it's a tiled environment, it takes to show you off balance, especially if the place is wet. So whenever you're trying to pass a business place and and it has any form of moisture on it, you'll find that the crutches that I use tend to slide.
Okay.
And for a person with wheelchair, you'll find that if it's like a area that has a simple rising, if they're trying to go up, the wheelchair tends to skid. They'll have to go down or go around. And for that reason, as you mentioned, the road, in some cases, is a better accessible place.
Oh, wow.
But again, it puts your lives in danger when you have to use the road, because the motorist won't take in consideration that someone with a disability is utilizing the road. They're saying that the road is made for vehicles. As such, you should not be in the road.
Right.
And in most cases, they're trying to commute very quickly, and you're moving slow, or you're too slow for them. And as a result, they may just bounce you, right? So for me, it's not just the accessibility or the structure not being accessible, but sometimes it's there, but the design of it makes it not accessible.
So the tiles, you spoke about the tiles that can allow you to slip using your crutches.
Fine.
So it is important then that persons who are constructing their space, if it is that they are going to be putting it where other persons have to utilize, then they need to use non-slip tiles. That is better
Exactly.
for you?
Yes, I suggest that's the case.
Okay, awesome. Sasha Gay, tell me about your challenges in the environment.
Okay, thank you for having me today. Okay, so one of the major challenges that I have on a daily basis is traveling, transportation. It can be very hard for me because not everyone wants to stop. And for me to get in the car and to put the wheelchair in the trunk, not everyone have the patience. The next thing is door jambs. They are usually too small for the wheelchair to pass.
Oh, doorways.
Yes.
Okay.
They are usually too small. Sometimes I have to squeeze the chair. If I'm not able to do that, then I can't get in. The next thing is the ramps on the road. Sometimes they are there, but I'm unable to access them because sometimes there is a car parked there. And whenever I request, for instance, there's a driver in the car, they get all offensive. Me requesting them to remove their car, they get offensive.
Do you find that the curb cuts, they're too steep or they're fine for you to maneuver with your wheelchair?
Some are too steep. Some of them I don't think they are ramps. I think they just lower the sidewalks, but they are not ramps. So if it's a concrete surface, it's easy for me to get up. But if it's like tile, as Lauren said, it will be slippery for me to access.
We have been talking about transportation. We've been talking about the built environment. Let us look at quickly education and health. What are the challenges what are the barriers that you have experienced in these?
For many persons who have a disability, and when you're thinking of, I work with the Jamaica Society for the Blind, so I have most experience with persons who are blind. Right. And one of the issues we find when persons seek to access education, especially, well, if you talk about the post-secondary level, you'll find that many institutions will say, look, we are not able to accommodate somebody who is blind. And I find that in many instances, the only reason why they're saying it is because they haven't done it before and they really haven't thought about it. I remember and I'm not saying this is ideal, no, but when I went to Calabar, there was no structure, there was no system set up to assist persons who were blind.
Right.
But I went and we had teachers and management who were willing and they made it work.
Yes.
Today, the technology is much, much better. So it is easier for persons to fit into the system, but I think there's a issue of a mindset in most cases. So, once, for example, once you see that the person is blind, the administrators, the teachers say, "Oh, I'm blind. I don't know how to teach them. I can't help them."
So it is an attitudinal barrier rather than the ability to really engage the student.
I think it's mainly an attitudinal barrier. I believe that with the right attitude, the other things, in most cases, can be overcome.
Indeed, indeed. This conversation is so exciting. I do not want to take the break, but I have to. So let us take the break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Hendricks. Today we have been talking access for persons with disabilities, and we continue to be joined by Executive Director of the Jamaica Society for the Blind, Conrad Harris, UTech students Sasha Gay Thompson and Laron Williamson. I know that you're all in school, well, except Conrad, of course, and looking forward to employment, fourth-year students almost graduating. Any fears about employment?
It came to my thought many times as a person with a disability, in a wheelchair to be exact, what to expect. Is everyone willing to employ me as a person in a wheelchair?
Mr. Harris, when you were going to seek employment, were there any fears? Were there any barriers that you encountered initially? Tell us your experience.
Well, I had many experiences, and I remember I was sending out resumes, and I think I sent out 50 before I got one response. And then there, I remember also I went to the this is a government agency that deals with employment. No, I don't remember the correct
fine.
name of it, but I went there, and you know, after of course I'm a graduate coming out of UE. I have my degree in mass comm, media and communication. So I go and I say, you know, I talk to the person and say, look, this is the situation. I'm looking for a job. And so they say, and how are you going to do this? And how are you going to do that? And you know, I was kind of shocked in terms of the attitude that I got. And you know, they were telling me, okay, there are no opportunities, but you know, they would keep my information on file. And then only to hear, like within a week or two, I heard, you know, the government seeking a lot of media practitioners for different positions. And to me, I felt that I wasn't considered because the fact that I was blind.
Question, at that time, did you put your disability on your resume? Were they aware those 50 applications that you would have made?
Initially, I alluded to it. I didn't put it directly. I alluded to it. Subsequently, I did not.
Okay.
My thinking, and you know, there people think about these things in different ways. My thinking based on my experience is that the attitudes towards blind persons were such that if I put the fact that I am blind, you know, I wouldn't be shortlisted, so I wouldn't even get a chance to make a point to show what I could do, right? So I figure that for me, the best scenario was not to put it and to go in and at least get a chance to have my foot in the door and to try to convince persons of my abilities.
Okay. Laron, I know that you are not yet working, but you are on teaching practice. What's the attitude of the students in the classroom when they saw that you had a disability, you use crutches?
It's an extraordinary experience. The students really gravitated to me real quickly. They came around asking, sir, do you want help going up the stairs? Do you want us to carry a bag for you? You know, students came across asking, sir, what do you teach? Right, you know, they're very engaging. They want to help, right? However, you'll find one or two students who may pass similar to remarks. They don't know that you're hearing. What persons need to be aware of that whenever you have a disability, you become very self-aware and conscious of your environment. So they could be whispering something, you'll still be catching on to it. Because I heard one student saying, no, sir, this not right. Teacher's supposed to have 2 foot. When did one?
Okay.
Right? Those type of comments. But for me, I don't let those type of things wear me down. Right? I try to look towards motivating things, uplifting things. So as a result, one student saying that does not impact the vast amount of students who are gravitating towards welcoming me in the school. So for me, I just ignored it and moved on.
Thank you so much. Sasha Gay, when you wanted to go to UTech to do IT and business, did you get any discouragement along the way? What was the attitude there?
Well, a lot of
Or were there any
persons, when I say I
barriers?
was going to apply for a university, they say, you sure you can manage? That's the response I get all the time. So how does that go? Is that even possible? Yeah, those are some of the response I get.
Well, here you are today, completed high school, almost completing university, and I'm
Yes.
sure you would have done well because you wouldn't have reached fourth year.
Yes.
Well, okay, great. So we do have quite a bit to be teaching our society in terms of, change of attitude towards persons with disabilities. There are persons in the space, in the society, who believe that changing the environment, retrofitting our buildings, they think that it's too costly. What would you say to them?
Steps for persons who are low vision. I mean, if you have the contrast at the edge of the text, something reflective, or the color scheme is different, the person can see the edge of the step and know that they are going up and down a step, and you can prevent somebody from falling or rolling down a step because they didn't see it. You have your glass doors. If you have some sign or some image you can put on it so persons know that it's not, so that's a glass door, not just an open space. Because I have known persons who have actually walked through a glass door because they thought it, because of their visual impairment, they couldn't figure out that it wasn't
an open space.
Right.
Okay.
So these are very, very simple things. Yes, there are some other complex things that maybe there are other things that are more expensive that you can do. But start. There are simple things that you can start with, which makes life much better for us.
I would actually tell them that an illness or disability is not something that you plan. And to be honest, it's something that can happen overnight. Right?
Because you acquired your disability.
Exactly. I wasn't born like this. In fact, in my upcoming, when I went to St. Catherine High School, I was a full able-bodied person.
Yes.
Right? And I want persons to remember that being disabled doesn't mean that you have to lose a limb or get any form of anything that you can see.
Right.
Getting old in itself brings a lot of disability. You start to lose your sight, you lose the ability to walk. Having buildings that you want to go about accessing, or different walks of life you want to engage in, and not having the right facility to partake in it. At that point in time, you'll realize that there's a need for it, and you'll develop an appreciation for the government putting those things in place.
But by that time, it would be too old for them.
Exactly.
So, yes. Anything from you, Sasha Gay?
Okay, I will say that having a disability is hard. So having the barriers is extra hard. So to make it easier for a person with disability, just try to fix it.
I would say, based on what you have said so far, in terms of our society, our people making an effort to ensure that our society becomes more inclusive, because if it doesn't only benefit persons with disabilities, it benefits everybody along their life's journey. Our overall cultural consciousness on how we treat and interact with persons with disabilities must change, and it needs to begin in the schools. We need to acknowledge and accept our peers for their differences as part of human diversity. If it is taught at a young age, less discrimination and more social inclusion will occur. Having children with and without disabilities learning side by side helps everybody appreciate the diversity, talents, and gifts that all children bring with them. As a society, we have a responsibility to promote inclusion of all differences. I'm Dr. Christine Hendricks. Until next time, walk good.